Chapter 5. The Storm and What Came of It. It was nearly 3 weeks after their landing that the Dwn Trdr was towed out of Narrowhaven Harbour. Very solemn farewells had been spoken, and a great crowd had assembled to see her departure. There had been cheers, and tears too, when Caspian made his last speech to the lone islanders and parted from the Duke and his family. But as the ship, her purple sails still flapping idly, drew further from the shore, and the sound of Caspian's trumpet from the poop came fainter across the water, everyone became silent. Then she came into the wind. The sail swelled out, the tug cast off, and began rowing back. The first real wave ran up under the Dwn Trdr's prow, and she was a live ship again. The men off duty went below. Drinian took the first watch on the poop, and she turned her head eastward round the south of Avra. The next few days were delightful. Lucy thought she was the most fortunate girl in the world as she woke each morning to see the reflections of the sunlit water dancing on the ceiling of her cabin, and looked round on all the nice new things she had got in the lone islands: sea boots and buskins and cloaks and jerkins and scarves. And then she would go on deck and take a look from the forecastle at the sea, which was a brighter blue each morning, and drink in the air that was a little warmer day by day. After that came breakfast, and such an appetite as one only has at sea. She spent a good deal of time sitting on the little bench in the stern playing chess with Reepicheep. It was amusing to see him lifting the pieces, which were far too big for him, with both paws, and standing on tiptoes if he made a move nearer to the center of the board. He was a good player, and when he remembered what he was doing, he usually won. But every now and then Lucy won because the mouse did something quite ridiculous, like sending a knight into the danger of a queen and a castle combined. This happened because he had momentarily forgotten it was a game of chess, and was thinking of real battle, and making the knight do what he certainly would have done in its place. For his mind was full of forlorn hopes, death or glory charges, and last stands. But this pleasant time did not last. There came an evening when Lucy, gazing idly astern at the long furrow or wake they were leaving behind them, saw a great rack of clouds building itself up in the west with amazing speed. Then a gap was torn in, and a yellow sunset poured through the gap. All the waves behind them seemed to take on the unusual shapes, and the sea was a drab or yellowish color, like dirty canvas. The air grew cold. The ship seemed to move uneasily, as if she felt danger behind her. The sail would be flat and limp one minute, and wildly full the next. While she was noticing these things, and wondering at a sinister change which had come over the very noise of the wind, Drinian cried, "All hands on deck!" In a moment everyone became frantically busy. The hatches were battened down, the galley fire was put out, men went aloft to reef the sail. Before they had finished, the storm struck them. It seemed to Lucy that a great valley in the sea had opened just before her bows, and they rushed down into it, deeper down than she would have believed possible. A great grey hill of water, far higher than the mast, rushed to meet them. It looked certain death, but they were tossed to the top of it. Then the ship seemed to spin around. A cataract of water poured over the deck. The poop and forecastle were like two islands with a fierce sea between them. Up aloft, the sailors were lying out along the yard, desperately trying to get control of the sail. A broken rope stood out sideways in the wind, as straight and stiff as if it were a poker. "Get below, madam!" bawled Drinian, and Lucy, knowing that landsmen and landswomen are a nuisance to the crew, began to obey. It was not easy. The Dwn Trdr was listing terribly to starboard, and the deck sloped like a roof of a house. She had to clamber round to the top of the ladder, holding on to the rail, and then stand by while two men climbed up it, and then get down it as best she could. It was well she was already holding on tight, for at the foot of the ladder another wave roared across the deck up to her shoulders. She was almost wet through with spray and rain, but this was colder. Then she made a dash for the cabin door, and got in and shut it for a moment. and shut out for a moment the appalling sight of the speed with which they were rushing into the dark, but not, of course, the horrible confusion of creaking, groanings, snappings, clatterings, roarings, and boomings, which only sounded more alarming below than they had done on the poop. And all the next day and the next it went on, and went on till one could hardly even remember a time before it had begun. And there always had to be 3 men at the tiller, and it was as much as 3 could do to keep any kind of course. There was always had to be men at the pump, and there was hardly any rest for anyone, and nothing could be cooked, and nothing could be dried, and one man was lost overboard, and they never saw the sun. When it was over, Eustace made the following entry in his diary. September 3rd, first day for ages when I have been able to write. We have been driven before a hurricane for 13 days and nights. I know that because I kept careful count, though the others all say it was only 12. Pleasant to be embarked on a dangerous voyage with people who can't even count right. I've had a ghastly time, up and down enormous waves, hour after hour, usually wet to the skin, and not even an attempt to give us a proper meals. Needless to say, there's no wireless or even a rocket, so no chance of signaling anyone for help. It all proves what I keep on telling them, the madness of setting out in this rotten little tub like this. It would be bad enough even if one was with decent people instead of fiends in human form. Caspian and Edmund are simply brutal to me. The night we lost our mast, there's only a stump left now. Though I was not at all well, they forced me to come on deck and work like a slave. Lucy shoved her oar in by saying that Reepicheep was longing to go, only he was too small. I wonder she doesn't see that everything the little beast does is all for the sake of showing off. Even at her age, she ought to have an amount of sense. Today the beastly boat is level at last, and the sun's out. We've all been jawing about what to do. We have food enough, pretty beastly stuff, most of it, to last for 16 days. The poultry were all washed overboard. Even if there hadn't been, the storm would have stopped them laying. The real trouble is water. 2 casks seem to have gotten a leak knocked in them, and are empty. Narnian efficiency again. On short rations, half a pint a day each, we've got enough for 12 days. There's still lots of rum and wine, but even they realize that would only make them thirstier. If we could, of course, the sensible thing would be to turn west at once and make for the Lone Islands. But it took us 18 days to get where we are, running like mad with a gale behind us. Even if we got an east wind, it might take us far longer to get back. And at present there's no sign of an east wind. In fact, there's no wind at all. As for rowing back, it would take far too long, and Caspian says the men couldn't row on half a pint of water a day. I'm pretty sure this is wrong. I tried to explain that perspiration really cools people down, so that the men would need less water if they were working. He didn't take any notice of this, which is always his way when he can't think of an answer. The others all voted for going on, in the hopes of finding land. I felt it my duty to point out that we didn't even know if there was any land ahead, and tried to get them to see the danger of wishful thinking. Instead of producing a better plan, they had the cheek to ask me what I proposed. So I just explained coolly and quietly that I had been kidnapped and brought out this way on this idiotic voyage without my consent, and it was hardly any of my business to get them out of their scrape.